replace our borough manager. We had a discussion around whether or not we wanted to, it was brought to our attention, it was an ordinance stipulating that the borough manager must live in the borough. We discussed, we thought we would have a better candidate pool if we removed that restriction. We instructed Manager Tran at that time to make the necessary modifications to the ordinance to allow us that flexibility. We don't have a candidate yet to suggest for permanent manager, but this is just in preparation for that. Any questions? Further discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve the work authorization for Gateway Engineers to prepare design specifications, scheduling, and cost estimates for the Crafton Pool project for an amount not to exceed $6,000.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so just some context. This motion is to prepare for whatever it is that we collectively decide regarding the three options. So at this time, what I think we need to do is have a robust conversation around the three options. The option, the first option, option A, is essentially to give the money back. One of the things I will make the public aware of. So we reached out for several grants, and we received 2 grants, which was a big win for Crafton, and it was our anticipation and our goal that we would actually be able to match one grant against the next grant. So you get $300,000 and $250,000, and they have to be matching grants. We were hoping we could match them against each other and then have the cost out of the borough just be whatever the delta is, whatever against the 2 matchings. That came back to us and said, you can't do that. You can't match against another grant. So what we were left with then is if we wanted to use all of the money, the $250,000 and the $300,000, then the burden on the borough would be $550,000. So we're here to discuss that tonight. So if we went ahead and didn't want to commit any borough funds, option A would be essentially to give the grant money back, that we don't have the appetite to spend that money. Option B, as Mary mentioned, I think she articulated it very well, is a kind of a compromise between the two. And then the last option, I think that April was referring to, and what Ms. O'Connell was referring to, is to bite the bullet and say, hey, do the entire project as originally planned, which is upwards of $1.3 million, which would be basically coming council and future councils to come up with the rest of the money that is the delta above 650 or the 550,000 and the 1.3 million. So those are the three options. The motion as it's presented today, we would only move forward with, frankly, if we chose either B or C. If the council's collective understanding or collective will is to go with A, then we'll table this motion and not take action on it. If we decide to go with either B or C, then this motion is really to get Gateway started on doing some of their studies, so that, as Mary mentioned, we would be prepared to do something by the fall. If we go with either B or C, we have to do something by the fall because Manager Trant got the extension. It was a bit of a difficult reach for him to get that extension, but we've been given it, and we have to act on it. And we cannot delay it beyond the fall. So, Mr. O'Brien, you care to mention anything else in context or give us context over any of the options as you see them?
As far as what you were saying, with option C, can you explain as far as, like, you said that there's money in the budget? Can you go into a little
Well, a
more?
budget is a fluid item. It's not set in stone. At any time, we can rearrange what we budget over the course of 2 years to come up with the roughly $300,000 a year. Not to mention our operating fund, which hovers between $750,000 and $1 million.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
I talked to John about that, and his view with option B was that next year we can go this funding round to see what money comes in and stage the project out a little bit further and do it and chunk it out and see what kind of funding we can get. I guess he talked to DCNR and DCD, and they both said that it could be favorable to do something like that, to chunk it out in pieces as long as the project gets done. We're still going to have to come up with some money of our own. But I think when he was looking at, when he talked to me, he thought option B gave us more time to get started, spend the money. I think by May, if I'm not mistaken, is the next grant round. To have another grant written for May, see where that comes in, and then phase 2 of the project.
Well, just to be clear though, if we go with option B, we are most definitely giving some grant money back. Right, because
Okay.
we have to act on, and we need to start to construct, we need to start to build, and we're not allowed to match against match. So if we take both grants, we are coming up with $550,000. We're obligated. If we give some of it back, if we give one of the grants back, we're still obligated to come up with $250,000. What John was suggesting was $100,000 this year, $100,000 next year, and $50,000 of fundraising. And we have to do that in the next two, the completion of this year, completion of next, construction cycle. So just to be clear, if we go with option B, we are definitely giving some grant money back. If we go with option C, then this council and future councils are gonna have to come up with that, the full delta. So I guess what I'm saying in a kind of a long-winded way is, yes, he got the one granting agency to agree to let us go through 2 construction cycles, which allowed us to have 2 budget cycles, but we have to come up with $250,000 then. So it's really $250,000 or $550,000. What happens if we do the $250,000 and say the bathhouse, doesn't get very updated, right? Or doesn't get money, or is dealt with by just public works? That doesn't preclude the future councils from addressing that, in future years with either additional borough money or applying for additional grants. But to be clear, we have to give up one of the grants if we're not committed to allocating $550,000 in this budget and next budget for this project.
What led us to believe that we should match the 2 grants against each other?
I believe it's been done before. I don't think that was, that wasn't a new idea. I think that's done in some situations. I don't know if it was a certain amount of money, if it reached a threshold. It's always something you have to ask for, and it can be denied. And in this case, it was denied. We also didn't know at the time that we would get both. So we applied for as many grants as we could to get as much money as we could. We got them, and they're all matching. So when we got them now, to match them was a significant sum of money for the borough. It's a good problem to have, but, and we can still keep them. If this council wants to, allocate $550,000, it's our option to keep both grants.
Do we know just the whole plan itself, part of the plan? We're focused on the pole itself right now. What about the other part of that plan? Did we ever get any cost estimates for the rest of the plan? What we're looking at if we did the whole plan?
It's all listed in the phases, approximate costs.
You mean, are you asking if we got further due diligence on the 1.3 million to really convince ourselves it was 1.3 million?
Well, I'm just looking at if we had the plan, like, there was one thing in the plan that I didn't understand. They said the discussion of moving the playground. We left the playground where it was. If we're working to a plan, let's work to the plan to complete the whole plan that everybody here sat and did. You know what I mean? So it's just not a piecemeal through the pole. It's, we already replaced the playground, and then some of the other things that were in that. I think Noble had some things, Clearview and Linwood. What is the whole ticket going to cost? I have no problem with doing a poll that needs done, something needs done. But are we looking to the big picture of what everything's going to cost to do a good, renovation of the whole park, not just the pool? Because we've done the pool before, back in the 90s, Ms. Fuchs, and I think Ms. O'Connor, you were there for that, but we didn't touch most of the other park. So instead of taking a piecemeal, do we look at it the holistic approach to say, okay, how can we get this done? This is what we really want to do, and move forward with that. That makes sense.
If I may speak, I think the committee itself prioritized the pool, the park, and then the pool. So we're just working according to what they prioritized for us.
Yeah, as a comprehensive plan for all the parks and recreation of the, of Crafton, right? We're not saying tonight, or making a decision tonight on, we're not gonna do anything with Lindward, or we're not doing anything with something else, right? What we do have to be, I think, cognizant of is if this council decided to allocate the $550,000, right? That would most likely be, you know, a burden now, a burden next year. It may be something, if we don't find it in the funds, we may actually go and, you know, put out a note for it, right? And based on that, that would then impact us from doing something, continuing down the priority list, as April pointed out, right? Just as a matter of reality, right? It's still a significant burden to do 100,000 this year and 100,000 next year. But we're not deciding now to not do anything with Lindward or not do anything with Noble. We just got those 2 grants on the pool. We have to decide whether or not we wanna match them or not match them, and then move forward.
Mr. President, I think in our budget meetings, Tom, you probably would remember, we sat in the budget meeting and discussed this, and thought that it was a better idea to do it in phases, maybe in 2 years. And that would come under that Plan B, which is, you know, the way I thought it was going since we had a budget meeting. You know, when were those budget meetings? November? October? November?
Yeah.
October.
Yeah, you remember the budget meeting we talked about this? And we thought that it was gonna be best if it was done over 2 years, even if we lose a little, right? Thanks.
Okay. Mayor?
I looked at option C, which I thought would be the way to go, but what is the date length on the Duncan? That's, you know, that has to, that's still out there, even though it's not mentioned anymore, that's gotta be paid. You know, there's a length of time before that's paid off. And to incur another note for, you know, Plan C, I think would have to take a lot of investigation by council and the borough manager, you know, checking in to see if it's an affordable item, you know. As I don't know what the length of note is on the other item, and then what would this be, you know, what would this incur? But I like Mary's discussion, you do the whole thing, but can you actually fiscally do it without, you know, incurring, you know, hardship for other things in the borough that need done?
Mr. Chairman, why don't we, I think option A, I don't hear anybody going for option A. Maybe we pass the motion, set up a meeting to discuss all those options, because it will probably be quite lengthy, and see which way we go, unless we have, you know, some in favor of option A. Sounds to me we have B and C, where everybody's in favor. If that's the case, we pass the motion, re-meet maybe with the rec board and the committees as one big unit and figure it out.
Well, I mean, and that's, I'm totally in agreement with that. I think though, what the rec committee's not gonna be able to tell us, right, is whether or not we wanna spend the money.
Right.
Right? Because Mary was very clear that if we had the money, she would wanna go with option C. So the burden really is this council to decide whether or not they wanna commit $550,000. So I'm perfectly fine with having a separate meeting to, you know, to hear how so I guess what I'm frustrated with a little bit is that the project isn't gonna change, right? We can't piecemeal it longer and extend and really wanna give, you know, have that grant money. We gotta make a decision soon, right? Almost immediately, in order to have the construction cycle be ready into the fall. And it's unusual, as has been explained to me by Manager Trent and others, is that most folks want to do the construction of the pool at the end of the year because you have more flexibility. If you have another construction cycle at the beginning of the year, we could not have constructed on the pool in January, not constructed on it in February, and, you know, we're into March, you probably could start now. But then it's gotta open in 2.5 months. So you have a much shorter cycle, and you can't predict the weather, right? March could be a wash, and you're really doing it in April. So it's, the time is really what is the most onerous for us right now. And if we have any discussion about whether we wanna move forward with C, it's really where is that money? Because when we went through the budget discussion, one of the things we had Deb have to say to us is, of all the $4+ million in the budget for Crafton, how much of it is truly discretionary? When you take away the salaries, and you take away the medical expenses, and you take away the pension you know, the true discretionary amount is actually quite low. And you call it discretionary, but some of it, you know, I don't know, you're kind of splitting hairs a little bit with discretionary, right? Discretionary kind of falls out a little bit in patching potholes, right, after a season. That's not all that discretionary, right? So then it gets even whittled down further. So if there are suggestions about where the money could come up with, right, for the 550,000, short of going out for a note, because if we went out for a note, well then we gotta figure out, well, what's the rate? You know, how would we fund it? You know, how many years would it be? We can ask, you know, Manager Trant to go and explore that, and we can ask somebody to go explore where would the money come out of and how long, and what other discretionary items in this budget and next budget would have to be eliminated to go with a 550. So I think those are the two things that the clearest way to go with option C would not be talk to the rec committee, because the rec committee would like to see us go, you know, option C. The key would be, what would the note run us? And if not the note, where would the discretionary income come from, or the discretionary budget come from in 15 and 16? And we can, if council's in mind, we can ask Manager Tran to explore both of those. Still move forward on this, because time is of the essence, right? If we're collectively gonna do B or C, we're doing something, right? Instruct him to do the other two, see what he comes back with. And then see again what the appetite of council is to move forward, either with funding it with a note, or funding it by eliminating some other, you know, discretionary, you know, budget if we find discretionary budget. Any thoughts?
So we moved in seconds, right? Been a long discussion.
Yeah, it's been a long discussion, it's been moved and seconded, so, and I mean, just to be clear, no one's interested in option A, right? I think Mr. Crown has mentioned that, I don't think anyone's interested in option A, so it's going with B or C. So we can move on this motion to at least get Gateway started on some of their studies, which I think will be relevant in either case. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, this one. I'll entertain a motion to appoint April Weitzel, Dave O'Brien, and Tom Phillips to a consultant selection committee for the comprehensive plan.
So moved.
Second.
So a little discussion on this. A different grant that we you know, applied for and received was to do a comprehensive plan in combination with other boroughs. It's come to the point in time where we need to select a consultant. John has been pushing very hard for the picking of that consultant so he can move forward. John would like to have a committee to get set up to help with the selection, and it was recommended those three folks, which I'm in full support of. Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to reappoint Michael Crown to the Craft and Planning Commission for a 4-year term to expire on April 13th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this motion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to appoint Luann Ryan to the Craft and Planning Commission for a remainder of a vacant term which shall expire on April 13th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to appoint Lydia Karlheim to the Craft and Planning Commission for a remainder of a vacant term, which shall expire on April 13th, 2016.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve an agreement with Northwest EMS to provide emergency medical services to the borough.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item?
Mr. Brown, I understand and I appreciate it that you put Northwest times in our copy for us. And I was just curious, were the other applicants for this position, where their times are?
We had their times, no? Their times were provided,
We had other applicants,
no,
and why not?
good question. We didn't have, when we sat down as the group and looked at the solution, there was a bunch of things gone through, a bunch of idea generators. And up until the last meeting, there was gonna be a consortium. Solicitor Eve said that's probably not a good idea, so, that idea is,
So the borough has no other choice but one, according to this?
That's what's being proposed.
Yeah,
I'm
we only-
speaking to Mr. Crown, please, sir.
it's being proposed.
One, so the borough has no other option, that's it. They have not been provided any other option.
We did, there was other options at the last meeting. Mr. Hayes had presented an extension if REMS wanted to extend the contract. We didn't receive anything, so.
Mr. Hayes wasn't at the last meeting. Was there another meeting you're referring to?
Yeah, the last
Yes, he
meeting,
was.
Mr. Hayes.
He was at the last one.
Oh
You're
my God.
there.
I'm sure I was here.
2 meetings ago. Right.
Yeah.
I thank you.
Yeah, you can sit down if you want, John. Stay there then. Any other discussion?
What happens if we don't choose tonight?
If we don't choose tonight, I think we have to have a special meeting to choose between now and April 4th. Because we don't have EMS beyond that.
We don't have many options.
No.
I like having options.
So,
Northwest is the best, that's the best option.
It's our only option.
The only
it's
option.
the only
We
option.
did that.
Yeah, well, whatever.
We
There was
did
no-
ask for,
Yeah. Any other discussion?
Can you walk the public through the process that this went through, just in terms of, why we didn't do an RFP for it, for example?
Seems we had months in advance.
Yeah, the original decision to terminate the contract with REMS was made in December, so here we are in March. I'm just a little disappointed that not only council but the public didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on this properly and analyze data. Like, I feel like I'm being blindsided and I don't have all the data to compare and contrast. And again, Mr. Crown, you did get us the Northwest data, I appreciate that, but you got it to us at 2 o'clock today. So, not much time to,
So,
digest it.
yeah, so a couple things I'd say to that. And, the timing could have been better here. But what happened was, we decided to give notice at the end of last year to give ourselves more flexibility on what provider to select. There was discussions had between, as been pointed out, between the fire chief, the police chief, head of public safety, and myself and the manager, around what we wanted to do from a public safety moving forward. And public safety, we were looking at it holistically with fire, EMS, and police. One thing that came up was the consolidation that's happening on the fire side. And it was proposed at that time that we should look at, or consider looking at, a consolidation of the emergency medical services of adjoining communities. Mr. Crown believed that he could get his ducks in a row, complete that consortium, and it'd be a viable option for us to select by the time April 4th came around. He did some Herculean efforts, got very, very close, but at the end of the day, the memorandum of understanding that he submitted, once submitted to the solicitor, felt like it was gonna take more time to work that language out than we had prior to the deadline. So, once that became not a viable option, then we need to have someone provide EMS. Northwest was part of that consortium. They were interested in submitting a proposal. I asked REMS if they would continue service, in some fashion, whether it be an extension of the service as it was written in the original agreement, if it just came to pass, or some different proposal. We didn't get one.
Excuse me. I do believe Mr. Nemick had spoken to Mr. Trent and said that they would extend it.
had a conversation with you on Friday afternoon.
I'm sorry. First of all, I'm not at this meeting, but you talked to me Friday afternoon, and you said that there was no proposal submitted. I called specifically at the request of the President of the Council as a follow-up to their last meeting where they requested if you were going to submit a proposal. I simply called and asked if you had a proposal to submit. You said no. I said we needed to meet on Monday. You said you could call a special meeting of your board to review and consider a proposal.
No, you asked me if we would continue covering service, and I said my board has said, yes, we will continue to provide service. And the question came from you, Mr. Hayes, would we be willing to cover the Crafton community until you figure all this mess out? That was after the meeting last week. So that's what I was relaying to Mr. Trent, that yes, we would continue to do that. I didn't know there was an option of continuing a 5-year contract, 3, that was never brought to my attention.
Or mine.
That we were given that option. You asked me if we would continue covering until we figured this mess out. I think was your exact words.
Yeah, and your exact words were you would have to check to see if your board would be willing to continue to do business with Crafton.
And I relayed that,
if you were willing to do business with Crafton, we would have to vote on something tonight. We don't have anything to vote on with respect to reps.
Well, if, in the contract, there is a 1-year automatic renewal, but you canceled that.
Yeah, I know.
So, and I did relay that to Mr. Trent, that we would be willing to continue that coverage. But you asked me, and he asked me if we would cover it month to month. That's what he said to me. Would we cover it month to month? I was willing to cover it for the next 5 years. Or however long the contract you wanted. I was waiting, there was misunderstanding because you asked me if I would cover it until this mess got straightened out.
Right, again, and you said you'd have to check with your board.
And I did, and I relayed that to him and said that we would be willing to continue coverage.
For how long?
For as long, I need a contract. I can't do a month to month because there's staffing involved in this. You know, if you want to do a
I just wanted to get
yeah,
an
if you want to do a
understanding.
1-year contract, if you want to do a 5-year contract, I'm willing to do that.
So you would not do it for less than 1 year, is what you're saying?
That's correct because of staffing issues.
Mr. Nimick, I had asked you for a proposal to present to council in their meeting materials for tonight. You said you could not submit a proposal because you need to meet with your board.
And then-
You said, misrepresent, that you offered a specific proposal that I could forward to council for their consideration tonight. I asked you if you had a proposal in response to council's request. You said you don't have a proposal to submit, but you'd be happy to continue service if you called a special meeting of your board for them to review the information and consider how they could provide a proposal to this council. You said specifically, no, you do not have a proposal to submit. I'd be happy to forward to council a proposal if you have one.
Right, and just to be clear, the reason why I was pressing John for that is my preference would be to have 2 proposals here tonight, Robinson and Northwest, and let the votes decide. That was what, and that's why I asked for one.
Well, you didn't ask me for a proposal. You said, would you be willing to cover the Crafton community until we figure this stuff out? That's what you asked me. Well, asking me that doesn't say we would like an official written proposal to continue a contract, to continue to provide service. You even said, you could tell me to go pound salt because we've already canceled your contract. You told me that.
No, it was the reverse.
Pound sand.
It was the reverse. You could tell us to
Oh,
go.
yeah, that's right, I'm sorry.
Because you might not be interested in doing
Exactly.
business with the borough, right?
Correct.
So
there was miscommunication. I didn't realize you actually wanted an official. You asked me if we would continue covering until we could figure this out, is what you asked me. Yes, Mr. Trent did ask me for a proposal on a Friday evening. He asked me if I had a proposal. I was waiting on, did you want me to cover it? Well, he said cover it month to month. I can't cover it month to month. I can cover it until you guys get someone, but it's got to be at least a 1-year contract. If you're willing to go into an agreement, or if you want a proposal, yes, I will submit a proposal.
There's a motion on the floor.
I would just like my original question answered.
A little too much time talking about this.
well, yeah. So time out. Right. There is a motion. We will vote on that motion. Right. We have to.
My original question, why didn't we take this to RFP, properly advertise it, have a time frame involved, you open bids publicly, and it avoids all of this. I just feel like, just really
Right, and-
bad performance on our part.
Did we do that last time to get Rome's in here?
I don't know.
Yeah, I was in the audience for
Three
that,
different,
as a citizen.
Companies coming from.
I mean, we've done it for the consultants for the comprehensive plan. We've done it for the solicitor's position.
Oh, you didn't do it for the phone company.
Yes, we did.
let's not talk about every other contract we've ever entered into,
I'm
and
just
whether
saying,
we
this
followed that,
council-
what's
this
the same
council has-
process between then and now.
This council has gone to RFP consistently, except for this piece, and I'm confused.
Yeah, and I thought, try to explain that we wouldn't go to